side of the road. A true trucker horror story. I've been driving flatbed for a long time. You see things on the road, things you can't unsee. But one night in rural Tennessee has stayed with me more than anything else. Even now, almost 2 decades later, it still creeps me out when I think about it. It was around 2006. I'd picked up a load of construction material, drywall or roofing, I can't even remember exactly, but it was pre-packaged in boxes. I remember because I had to use strap protectors on the load. This was somewhere between Memphis and Nashville, closer to the spot where Tennessee kisses Mississippi and Alabama. Just 2-lane roads, thick woods, and a whole lot of nothing. The load was tarped as required. I strapped it all down, covered it up, and left the shipper. About 5 miles down the road, middle of nowhere, I noticed my tarp flapping in the wind. Not a good sign. I found a wide shoulder and pulled over to fix it. Climbing down out of the cab, I realized the truth. I'd done a terrible job tarping this load. Sloppy, rushed. I decided to redo it on the side of the road right then and there. So I undid all the bungee straps, dragged the tarps off, rolled them back up, climbed onto the load and started unrolling the tarps again. The woods pressed in on either side, dark and silent, the air heavy with the smell of pine and damp earth. That's when I saw him. A man walking down the same side of the road I was on, coming toward my truck from the distance. At first, I didn't think much of it, just another walker. But this was the middle of nowhere. No houses, no gas stations, just woods. I decided to keep an eye on him while working. By the time I'd got the tarp set in place and was climbing down to start hooking the bungee straps back on, the man had gotten closer. Close enough that I was now paying more attention to him than to the tarp. I reached for my winch bar and set it on the trailer within arm's reach. 8 pounds of solid metal, 4 feet long, tapered to a blunt point on one end and hollow on the other. Truckers use it to tighten straps and chains, but it can serve another purpose if you're in a pinch. The guy reached me. The first thing I noticed was his hair. It was like a mullet, but patchy, as if he'd tried to cut it himself in the dark and given up halfway. Uneven chunks missing, scalp showing through. Good enough to party kind of haircut. The second thing I noticed were his eyes. They weren't glassy or dilated like a drunk or someone on meth. They were just wrong. Clear, but vacant. Like the elevator didn't quite go all the way to the top floor. His clothes were dirty and worn, especially his white tennis shoes. One shoe had no laces and the tongue was hanging out crooked. All of it combined into a picture of someone who wasn't quite put together. He stopped next to me, waited until I acknowledged him, then said in a flat tone, "I've got a long walk." I nodded. "Yeah, man, you do. We're in the middle of nowhere. I made it clear there was no ride to be had here." He nodded back, started to walk past me, kept going down the road. Then he stopped at about my driver door, turned around, walked back to me, and repeated himself. "I've got a long walk." I explained again that I couldn't give him a ride. Insurance, company policy, all that. Apologized for not being able to help. He seemed to accept it. He turned back around and left. I waited for him to get a little ways away, then went back to my work. hooked on the last of the bungee straps, kept an eye on him. He was moving away from me. When I looked up again, he'd turned around. Now he was heading back toward me. He was about 100 yards in front of my truck and coming closer. It looked like he was talking on a cell phone. His hand was up to his face, his mouth moving, the other hand gesturing like he was having a heated conversation. A chill ran down my back. I finished the straps, grabbed my winch bar, and climbed into my truck just as he got within about 10 yards. As soon as I was in the cab, I locked the doors and set the winch bar on the passenger seat, just in case. I looked at him again. That's when I realized he wasn't holding a phone. He was talking to his hand, and it didn't look like a nice conversation. He looked angry, his mouth twisting, his free hand waving violently. My heart started pounding. I cranked the truck, threw it in gear, and pulled out. I didn't check for traffic, didn't care. As I passed him, he stopped, turned, and just stared at me, still holding his hand to his face like a phone. A dead, cold look in his eyes. I shifted up through the gears, 5th, 6th, 7th. My hands were slick on the wheel. By the time I dared to glance in my mirror, there was no one there. Just an empty road stretching back into the trees. I nearly murdered everyone at the intersection. True trucker horror story. The job was simple. Move a Caterpillar D9 off a property and deliver it to another company. The dozer was gargantuan, well over 100,000 pounds, and the tractor and drop trailer we used were relics of a tougher era. Mechanically functional, yes, but they had all the character of old iron that had seen too many winters. I didn't think about it much when I took the run. We chained and strapped that thing down like it was a sleeping elephant. Cross chains, binders, every strap we had, and backed it onto the drop. I remember the metallic smell of the chains, the clink of links as we cinched them tight, and the satisfied nod the yard boss gave before I pulled out. He told me to take it slow, call if anything felt wrong. I nodded. We all do. But you never think something will actually go wrong until you do. The corner that did it for me was one of those intersections you learn to hate. It sits at the bottom of a hill on a state route, a blind crest if you come from the other side. You pop over the top, and 90 degrees later you're staring down at a signal or stopped traffic that simply wasn't visible until you crossed the peak. Most of the time you treat it with respect. Downshift early. Keep a right foot covering the brake. You give it room, because a big rig doesn't stop like a car. That afternoon the sky was a flat metallic gray, and the highway had a slick film in patches. A road sheen, then freeze. My CB crackled to life as I hit the hill. Someone was screaming into Channel 4, static and urgency shredding the message. My radio wasn't tuned right, so I only caught fragments. Light, accident, cars, slow. The hair on my neck went up. Even muffled, the tone told me there was trouble ahead. I eased off the accelerator and downshifted. The D9 behind me felt like a sleeping whale on the trailer. Momentum is a cruel friend when you're hauling that kind of mass. You think you've got margin, but margin thins fast when the road bites. At the crest, I saw it. Glass and metal tangled at the intersection. A fresh wreck and rows of stopped cars. People were out of their vehicles, scattered like startled birds. There were no cops yet. The accident was brand new. My brain ran a checklist. Trailer weight, speed, stopping distance. None of it looked good. I punched the brakes. The first slow applied. The trailer pushed. My steering wheel tugged back and forth. Then tires hit slick black ice. The tractor jerked. The trailer began to slide. I felt the fifth wheel making a noise I'll never forget. That horrible clank and shift. And then the world went off kilter. I glanced at the driver's side mirror. The dozer that had been planted behind me minutes before was gone from that view. My heart slammed. I spun my head to the passenger mirror and my stomach dropped. There it was in full profile. The trailer and dozer had swung out from behind me in a way that told my body I had made a terrible mistake. The trailer had come around. The rig was starting to jackknife. Jackknife is a small word for a big, uncontrollable physics problem when you're carrying one of the heaviest pieces of mobile earth-moving equipment around. The cab felt like a small boat on a storm-swept deck. I kept jamming the brakes and working the wheel, but the truck had slipped into a rhythm of its own. I was along for the ride. I remember thinking, with the calmness of someone watching a disaster documentary, that I was about to plow through an intersection full of passenger cars. I was convinced, more than convinced. It was a certainty in my gut that I would kill people. There was no time for calculations or miracle maneuvers. All I could do was sound the horn until my throat hurt and try to point the truck into what felt like the least worse angle. Honk, honk, honk. My horn became a desperate alarm for anyone who would listen. People were running, abandoning cars. They scattered off the asphalt, faces pale, hands over mouths. I watched them through the windshield like a man in a bad dream. The trailer's tires, which had been frozen and slipping, began to heat from the friction as we skidded. They screamed, a deep, high-pitched keening that made the hair on my arm stand up. With each passing second, that metallic scream sounded more like pleading. And then, as if the road itself gave me one final mercy, the trailer lost momentum. The whole monstrous assembly lurched and came to a shuddering stop. The nose of the tractor was within 3 feet of the last stationary car in the intersection. I could have stepped from my bumper onto that car's bumper without jumping. The trailer sat at an angle, blocking both lanes and the breakdown shoulder. For a long, breathless minute I sat shaking behind the wheel, sweating despite the cold, pinned by the realization of how close we had come. Then, someone at the top of the hill who'd been broadcasting on the CB managed to get through to enough trucks that they slowed traffic. From up the grade I could see another tractor-trailer sliding toward the intersection. Another person fighting the same invisible force. He stopped parallel to me miraculously and climbed down, hands on his head like a man who'd been given a second life. We stared at each other. 2 operators who'd been in the teeth of it, and the world felt unreal. Later, when the cops and the tow trucks finally showed up and the adrenaline collapsed into shaking hands and weak knees, random people who had fled their cars came back to the asphalt. They comforted me in a way I have rarely needed comfort. Simple pats, the offering of a cigarette, words that made no physics sense but patched whatever part of a person's nerves had been shredded. "You did good," someone said. "You did all you could." I wanted to believe them. I still get goosebumps when I think about how close it was. If the trailer tires hadn't found enough traction for those last few heartbeats, if even 5 miles an hour faster, or another patch of ice had held, or if the weight had shifted a hair differently, the rig would have become a battering ram. It would have been my fault. The image of those scattered cars, the people running, it stays with you. For an operator, losing control is a profound terror. And for a while afterward, every intersection, every slick patch, every blind crest held a whisper of that day. We drive machines, but we move mass. Responsibility in that job is not abstract. It is literal and heavy. 20 years on, the memory is still sharp enough to make me replay it in my head. The horn, the clanking, the trailer's scream, and the thunder of my heart when the truck finally stopped. It taught me respect in a way no safety meeting ever could.